pre-strip plan of how it's going to be.
Have a name up there.
Are you ready, Craig?
I'm ready when you are, sir.
I'd like to call to order the policy committee meeting for AMATS. It's Thursday, July 24th. It's 1:30 p.m. We have in attendance Ms. Heil, Mr. Campbell, Mr. Michaelis is in for Mr. Sullivan, Mr. Steele is here representing the assembly, and unless he shows up later, Mr. Peterson will be the second assembly member today, so we have a quorum. Mr. Lyon, could you proceed with our public announcement?
Sir, all AMATS meetings are public meetings. We'll have a business item, we'll have presentation by staff or a consultant. The committee will then be given a chance to discuss the matter, and at that point, the public will then be invited to comment.
Thank you. We have in front of us an agenda. Do we have any modifications, Mr. Lyon, that you're aware of at this point that you'd like to propose?
None that I know of.
Move to approve the agenda?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion amongst the committee? Any objection to adopting the agenda as presented? Seeing none, we have an approved agenda. We have minutes from June 27, 2013, which is quite a while ago.
Move to approve June 27, 2013 minutes?
All you know was.
Second, but I'd like to have an explanation.
Moved and seconded. Mr. Lyon, could you tell us what the status is of the 2013 minutes?
So basically what happened is these fell through the cracks. We were in between our previous person who was, I don't know what her exact title is, but the person who takes care of minutes like Lori does, and we all thought this set of minutes had been approved. We couldn't find out for certain that it had, so just to err on the side of caution, we are making sure we're approving them now, and there won't be any question on it. It's possible that these had been approved, but we could not find an actual vote on them, so taking care of it by belt and suspenders and making sure we vote on it.
Okay. Any modifications anybody would like to propose? Mr. Flynn has arrived, so he will be taking over the voting membership of the assembly. So Mr. Peterson, thank you, Mr. Peterson, for your service.
We try not to break them in too hard.
He's on the clock for about a minute and a half. Any corrections or modifications to these minutes? Any objection to approval? Seeing none, these 2013 minutes are approved. We now move to the March 27, 2014 minutes.
So moved?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any corrections or amendments anyone would like to propose to these?
Chair, no changes, but I would like to make a comment once we're done approving these, please.
Of course. Any objection to approval of the 27th of March 2014 minutes? Seeing none, those are approved. Can you wait until after we're done with the third set of minutes, Mr. Flynn? Sure. Thank you. We now have the May 22nd, 2014 minutes in front of us.
Move to approve?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any corrections or amendments to these minutes? Any objection to adoption of these minutes? Seeing none, the 22 of May minutes are approved. Mr. Flynn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In reviewing these, I'm reminded I know that you and Mr. Michaelis have discussed the Spenard Road project and how best to fund that and the utilization of AMATS monies versus state local monies. And I know that my colleague, Mr. Steele, has harassed me mercilessly for acceding to allowing AMATS funding to be part of this project. So could I respectfully request that under informational reports at our next meeting, and Mr. Lyon, this is kind of directed at you, we get a memorandum sort of where we are in terms of fund sources for the Spenard Road project and what our options are up to and including ways to obviate the necessity of AMATS dollars so that that project can be completed in a more expeditious manner.
Got it.
No objection.
I support that. I thought you might. Thank you,
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
We move forward now to business items. Our first item A is AMATS, Air Quality Advisory Committee Bylaw Revision.
Okay, so what we have is two changes in our air quality bylaws, and one of those changes will is basically pertains only to the air quality ones, but the other change will apply to the Bicycle and Pedestrian Committee and the Freight Advisory Committee as well. So the first change is the one that will apply to all committees, and we basically wanted to run it through the committees to make sure this idea was agreeable before we change the rest of them. So if you look on page 2, you'll see section 1.12. The idea here is to affirm the notion that all of our advisory committees, their advice, their suggestions, et cetera, will go through the technical advisory committee to the policy committee. In other words, they're not advising the policy committee directly. They are advising the policy committee through the technical committee, so that the technical committee always has the opportunity to adjudicate and offer suggestions on their advice. And that's our sense of how the committees were set up in the first place, and we just wanted to change the language a little bit there to affirm that, and that's what we've tried there. And that suggestion, that section 1.1.2, was affirmed by the technical advisory committee.
Okay.
The second portion.
Let's just take them one at a time.
Okay.
Does anybody from the public have a comment on this proposed change to the committee regulations here?
Who was it published?
When was it published?
Online?
It was published as part of this packet, I believe, a week ago online, was it not?
These were published a week ago. This change went through the technical advisory committee, which would have been 3 weeks ago it was published. 2 weeks ago is when they met on it.
Correction, I should identify who I am for the record. Eugene Haberman, so I should have said my name first, so.
Okay, no public comment. Does anybody,
Will that slow things down, or are the committee meeting dates scheduled around such that it'll just go?
you're asking if the recommendation of, or the clarification that these committees report through
Having
the technical committee?
Yeah.
My understanding is that's how the
We
way
try
it
to do that
operates
anyway.
today officially. I mean, I am, as a chairman, reluctant to take things that have not gone through the TAC before this body. And so I would say that this is just a clarification on a process that's already in place. Mr. McHale?
And if I remember correctly, Mr. Flynn, we had this discussion quite a few meetings ago about that this is probably just to make sure that we do it this way so we're consistent.
Yeah. I don't think it's a bad change. Have we run this actually through the, I see this is from the Air Quality Advisory Committee, run this through Mike and Ped and through Freight Advisory?
So this just went through the technical committee after their quality.
Not to get too stuck on process, but before we approve this, it might be worthwhile just to get their perspective and see if there's any concerns that those advisory committees have with this change prior ROK. Just because the technical advisory committee tends to be, the membership tends to be people who are a little more experienced in this process than the advisory committees. And therefore maybe less receptive to some of the recommendations that their subcommittees would offer. Perhaps occasionally it's good for us to hear that information directly, but I just put that as a comment that we should contemplate before we approve it.
Mr. Chair, for just my experience for how we've been working through these committees is that the Freight Advisory Committee has always gone under this assumption that their suggestions always go to the Technical Advisory Committee. The Bicycle and Pedestrian Committee, we've had substantive discussions on when they're offering a suggestion, should they just take it right to the Bicycle and Pedestrian, or to the Policy Committee? And staff has always made it abundantly clear to them the way the committees were set up is the suggestions always funnel through the Technical Advisory Committee because, as Mr. Campbell pointed out, this committee always wants to know what did the Technical Advisory Committee think of this suggestion. And so they're aware of that. They're not, I guess they're not aware of this specific change, exactly how it's written, but I think they're very aware of how the process has been working and has been in practice.
I don't disagree this is consistent with past practice. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
If you'll recall, when we get comments from committee, be it a subcommittee or the planning and zoning committee, you always get a table that says, here's their comments. And then you can see if the TAC will either agree or disagree or offer recommendations. So any comments that come in through a committee, you get to see them verbatim. We've never changed the committee's comment. So even though it comes through us, we don't, or if I put my TAC hat on, we're not changing their comments or their recommendations. Those are always there. The staff's very, very good about making sure that everybody's comments are in their entirety. But what it does do is allow us to say, don't forget about this issue, or put some kind of, things for you to think about
Caveat.
further.
Okay. Can I have a motion, please?
Move to approve.
Second?
Moved and seconded. Seems like we've already had our discussion on this, but does anybody have any further discussion they'd like to have on this now that we've got a motion before us?
Is this only the one item?
This is the first item, correct?
Page
Page 1.1.2. Any objection to passing this as presented? Seeing no objection, it's passed. Second one, Mr. Line.
This basically just clarifies that if, as it says in 2.53, no committee member with an identified conflict of interest may sit on the technical advisory committee as the air quality representative. We have a specific member of the AMATS Air Quality Advisory Committee who sits on our technical advisory committee. We do not have either a bicycle and pedestrian committee seat or a freight advisory committee seat. We just have the one seat. So this would only apply to the Air Quality Advisory Committee. And this suggestion came about from the Air Quality Advisory Committee to clarify who, if someone was on the Air Quality Advisory Committee and they had a perceived conflict of interest, they shouldn't be the TAC member because they'd have to recuse themselves quite often.
I believe we discussed it at this body as well.
We passed the actual language
Yeah.
before we confirmed Mr. Spring on the TAC. So
Right.
what's happening now is you're just adding formally the language we already passed
Right.
to this document.
So is there anybody in the public that would care to comment on this proposed modification? Anybody here have any discussion and or motion?
Question, is there a mechanism for a substitute? If the Air Quality Advisory Committee's designee to the TAC is declared to have a conflict on a particular issue, is there a mechanism for a substitute from the Air?
Yeah, we have a first and a second TAC rep right now. 3.2.
Section 3.2.
Yeah, 3.2.4.
Under
The chair may appoint an alternate member of the committee to serve as the TAC rep in the absence of the elected member. So,
Move to approve.
Second?
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Any objection to passing as presented? Seeing none, that passes as well. Next item is the AMATS Freight Advisory Committee appointment. Mr. Lyon, is that you as well?
that's me. You're not hearing a lot of me today.
You're on point all day.
That's what we usually do. So we have a freight advisory committee, as you know, and there is a Port of Anchorage representative on that body. And the position had been held by Rich Wilson, who was the director of the Port of Anchorage. And now we have Mr. Rebuffo, who is the director of the Port of Anchorage. And so he decided to cut out the number of meetings he was going to have. And so he came off the technical advisory committee and was replaced by Sharon Walsh. And so now we have an opening on the Freight Advisory Committee, and Mr. Rebuffo is the nominee, and the Technical Advisory Committee met on this and unanimously recommended his approval.
Okay. Anybody from the public? Mr. Thompson, care to comment on this?
Aves, he was just talking to you.
I'm afraid it was interesting, I'm sure. John, did you have a comment on the nomination of Mr. Rebuffo to be on the Freight Advisory Committee?
Mr. Chairman, only that we welcome his participation.
Thank you. Any further public comment?
Move to approve.
Second?
Any concerns or discussion from the body? Any,
I just said that he was very active in the technical advisory committee, so he's well aware of how everything works, and that's going to be an asset to that committee.
okay. Any objection to passing this nomination? Seeing none, Mr. Rebuffo is approved. Next item, I believe, is the AMATS PUP number 6 report extension.
Yeah,
Please
so
decode that.
I'll do my best. So our AMATS policy and procedures govern how we operate, talk about what amount of funding we allocate into different categories, among other things. And one of the things that was added last year, I believe it was this policy and procedure number 6, which talks about what are the assumptions that we have that go into our model, and what do different entities, when they're doing the same sort of modeling and gathering household employment information, et cetera, what do they use? So in other words, if there's an entity that's modeling in Anchorage, are they using different information than us? And so we want to try to all be on the same page. And part of that policy and procedure number 6 included a deadline of creating a report, or included a report which had a deadline of June 1st, 2014, that said, here's a report that talks about all of the assumptions that we have going into the forecast and all that sort of stuff. But we're in the middle of several different contracts, which include a household travel survey and a model update, and then of course soon we'll be doing our metropolitan transportation plan. And so we don't have this information yet because we're in the middle of creating it. And so staff asked that the deadline for that date be delayed a year for that report, and the technical advisory committee met and agreed to recommend the additional 1 year to get that report done. So that's what we're asking for.
Any comments from the public on this? Yes, sir?
This is an overall, I thought I was correct, and I didn't want to say something until I went across the hall, double check. As some of you are aware, I follow announcements when meetings are notified on the website of the municipality of Anchorage. I just left across the hall to double check on the main website. The AMATS meeting, this body here, there is not on the homepage public notice section there. It's not on the assembly one calendar thing. It's not on the boards and commissions. It is on that two sheets that's posted. One's outside the city hall, and one that's posted in the city clerk's office, and that's where it's noted. Okay? But aside from that, the major place for the public to know about this meeting is not there. So as many who may be in this room, I follow check and balances on whether you follow the rules of Open Meetings Act, appropriate notice for public meetings, and also providing state law providing a reasonable opportunity to be heard in public meeting. As far as I'm going to say is, this meeting was not appropriately noticed, and you need to appropriately notice this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments? Yes, sir.
Sir, I actually pulled this from the Muni website several days ago, that the agenda for the meeting, so it was noticed and I follow the AMATS meeting schedule. And
It may be on a different place, but it's not on the main calendar where these events are supposed to be
there's a
published.
calendar
Thank you.
in the
Okay.
bottom.
His turn to talk, please, sir.
There's a calendar in the bottom right or bottom left-hand side of the website, and you can click on assembly meetings and go to that, and it's always been there.
Okay.
Thank you. They witnessed me looking at the screen on assembly meetings, what you were referring to. That's the one I looked at. Boards and commission listing calendar. Also, the main one on the homepage where you click on public notices, which is when it was originally posted and when it's been taken off. And it's not on any of those three main ones. This is the principal place where the public, you may have it somewhere buried somewhere else on a webpage somewhere else, but it's not on the principal calendar. That's not appropriate. That's a lack of appropriate notice. And as some of you in the assembly know, I follow things very closely. That's why I didn't say toward the beginning of the meeting, because I went back across the hall to double check this, because I didn't want to be in error. And, I had double eyes look at that.
Thank you for your comments, sir. I believe the discussion that we were trying to have on this was the extension of the, let me get the correct language here, P&P number 6 report. Does anybody else have any comments on that topic? Seeing none. Anybody care to make a motion? Would anybody care to discuss it at this level?
me ask a question or two, Mr. Chairman?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Mr. Lyon, first off, I appreciate this. I think this is an important step, and I know you guys and the staff's been working diligently on this. I think it's a very important piece of our planning process. And I recognize we can't make things happen faster than they happen. I'm a little concerned about the delay because the purpose behind this was to develop consistency around some of the projects that we have being considered. How effective are we being in applying some sort of standard, even if it's not official and approved by this committee, across the spectrum of projects taking place in South Central Alaska?
Well, we're trying to gather the information now. There are a lot of things that go into it. One of our main sources is from ICER, and they haven't done a report in a while, and there's really nothing on the horizon from when they're going to be done. So we're trying to get that information ourselves. The idea behind this was to collaborate between the Mat-Su Borough and specifically large projects such as the Kinnickarn Crossing to make sure that we're using the same information, and if not, we at least know what the differences are. And we can't tell Mat-Su Borough or the Kinnickarn Crossing which information they use, but we want to make sure that if they're using something different, we know it. And so we're in the middle of the process of gathering this information, and it's just not ready yet, partly because ICER's not doing theirs, and we're having to find a way around that.
Mr. Steele?
I just think it's a good procedure. I hate to postpone things to try and get all our ducks in a row, or for everybody's ducks in a row. But you have to be able to explain why something is different. And if you know what the assumptions were and what the factors were that were measured, you certainly can make better decisions. So I applaud the effort.
And we're not delaying any of our work product. We're continuing the pace on our MTP update, and we're in the middle of doing our model update, and our travel survey is out right now. So we're not slowing down any of our efforts for continuing to make sure we're getting our work done. We don't have this information yet, and we need to have some more time to get it done.
Mr. Flynn, follow-up?
No, I guess I support this effort. I'm a little disappointed it's taking as long as it has, and I'll not go into detail.
You're starting to sound like me. You've got a smile on your face.
He's been here too
I
long.
usually got a frown.
I guess my only concern with this is without going into too much depth, I think we have some projects that are attempting to move forward using incorrect data, and are not having this in place allows that to continue and waste the public money and time. But with that, I will move to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion, Cindy? Did this come through? This came through the TAC with the recommendation. I'm going to pile on a little bit here, Craig, and say, to me, this is inappropriate that we're being notified of something that was due June 1. I mean, it's July 24th. A reasonable request for extension would have been in April or March or something. To be asking for extension in July, I mean, basically, we aren't given any opportunity to redirect resources to help get this thing done in a timely fashion. I share Mr. Flynn's. I don't have the ability to smile when he's saying it like he's a trained politician, but I am concerned about it. So I would hope that in the future we have these discussions before the event has come and passed, and not after. With that, is there any objection to the motion on the table in front of us? Seeing none, we have passed that motion. Item D, Gamble Street redevelopment project. Mr. Lyon?
Yes, so as you are aware, we've had several discussions on this particular project, this topic. We had several TAC meetings on it. We had a TAC work session on it, and the results of the work session, which then were held at the TAC actual meeting 2 weeks ago, was that the suggestion was that this project should be, this proposal should be looked at in the context of its entire regional impact when we're doing the next MTP update, which we're doing right now. And so instead of taking this project, for lack of a better term, in a vacuum and just looking at the one right-of-way, how it goes there, we look at it regionally in a more holistic approach while we do the MTP update so that we get a better sense of it. That was the recommendation out of the TAC.
And so what is the action before this board?
This project came to us originally as a TIP nomination to be included in the 15 to 18 TIP as a project to start rolling on right now. And so the recommendation now is to, instead of including that in the 15 to 18 TIP as a project to get marching on, to include it in the MTP update when we look at all the projects that we have. Whenever we do an MTP update, we look at new projects that might be added because the old ones are done. So this would be added in and looked at then.
Is the tip out for public comment right now?
What is
Or
out?
did we close that already?
The public comment on the TIP is done. What's out right now is the public comment on the air quality conformity for the new TIP. That's it.
So to recap then, TAC recommended that this be included as part of the MTP analysis in terms of its holistic impacts to the transportation system within the AMATS boundary areas.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
And so it's not in the tip right now?
It is not in the TIP right now. The Fairview, I think I have this right, the Fairview pedestrian study was in the MTP, but this particular project was not of those specific parameters.
Okay,
I'm still trying, I don't think we ever do anything.
not sure we do either, but
Oh, we do.
I'm going to.
But it's a whole bunch of people want to talk about it. So let's
I'm
make it
gonna
happen
let
first.
people, I assume there's people here that want to talk about this, and so if they would stand up and start talking.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
I'm going to just pass across a couple pictures that you can pass on. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the Policy Committee for taking this up. It's something we worked
Can
on
you
for...
identify yourself? for the
Yes,
record,
I'm
please?
Paul Foose. I'm the project manager for this project for the Fairview Business Association, and also here is our president, Heidi Heinrich, of the Lucky Wishbone restaurant. So, the businesses got together and thought, what are the things we could do to really improve the area? And so we looked at this Gamble Street redevelopment. First meeting we had was with Jennifer Witt and Scott Thomas here in October of 2011. And we said, let's look at the things that we could do that would benefit the area and be good for safety and pedestrians while we sort out all these other things that are happening. So we did. We went to the legislature. We knew we'd have to provide data. We got a $250,000 appropriation from them. The commissioner and the governor supported it and signed it into law. We did that. So we came back in June, delivered that to the Department of Transportation. And at that time, we got a letter from Ken Morton said, well, we can't really have a local community group being a sponsor of this. You need to go get a sponsor, a municipal sponsor. So we took it to the Borough Assembly. The Borough Assembly unanimously passed a resolution in support of it. So then with the municipal staff and DOT, some additional questions arose about some of these. How would it tie into Kabata if it happened, or highway to highway, or all of those? And so the Assembly gave us an additional $83,000 to do those studies. And all of those were done and turned over to the state and to the municipality, and two representatives of that company, Kittleson and Associates, are here today if you had any technical questions about it. So what we came up, we thought was practical. People said, well, let's put bike paths in. No, this is a major arterial. Let's put in shrubbery. No, we have to get in and clear the snow. That's one of the biggest problems we've got there now. So, with the recognition it was a major arterial, that's how we came up with these recommendations. Although, for us, part of it is cosmetic, we think that the most important parts of this are really safety. In the pictures that you saw, the sidewalk is completely blocked with utilities. We've got people in wheelchairs going out into the road. In the winter, it's completely snowed in because of the, you can't get in to plow the snow because of utilities. And actually, that picture you saw, that spike sticking out as a railroad tie meant to steer your car before it hits the pole. Because if you hit that wooden pole and knock it over, somebody's going to get electrocuted, and 2 people already have. So the safety issues really need to be addressed. We realize it's part of the bigger picture, and we've indicated our willingness to work with the department on Kabata and also highway to highway. Another group that we're with extremely interested in that is the Downtown Partnership. It also has similar concerns of figuring out how that's going to work on this side of the ocean. So we found out that you do have an indefinite quantity contract with Kittleson, who's done a lot of work for both of you, that you could use just by authorizing them to do it, to maybe look at some of these interfaces with Kabata, highway to highway, and we've also proposed a possible parking structure to alleviate some of the congestion at 15th and Gamble during an event at the Sullivan Arena. That's an area that needs special attention. But we'd welcome all of that, and the community council, someone will speak from that, but everybody really participated in all of this, and we weren't standing in the way. We're just looking for the smart way to do it to provide some benefits to the community.
Okay.
I'll take any questions if you have
Yeah, I was
some.
going to say thank you for your testimony. Before the board, it's not my intent to turn this into a debate. So if we have some clarification questions, that's appropriate, but I do not want to engage in an argument here. That's not the purpose of this body. So,
Right.
Mr.
Yeah, just
DeSantis,
for
please.
clarification, first of all, as you stated, and rightly so, the municipality supports the project, as does the assembly and administration, so that's not the issue. I just wanted to hear from you and make sure I understood that you support the recommendation that's before us.
Yes, sir. It's just the
Okay.
next step. We'll be part of this overall analysis, and we do support the staff recommendation.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Anybody else from the committee have questions for Mr. Hughes while he's here?
I'm not sure my question's for Mr. Foos or not. We have a resurfacing project scheduled for this corridor. What's the timing on that?
Soon,
System.
Okay.
sooner than this.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then I'll wait until we're done with public testimony.
Okay, thank you. It's fine. Thank you. Would anybody else care to comment on the item in front of us? Yes, ma'am.
Heidi Heinrich, the president of the Business Association of the Lucky Wishbone. Once again, we are working hard, not only for Fairview, but for Anchorage, to try and change the face of a very important neighborhood, a neighborhood that could connect everything in a way that's very vital to this community. I think that, as a person that has season tickets for the Aces games, it is a very big detriment for people having to walk down these sidewalks. It's something that can't wait too long, and in the situation that we've been in, we've been put off till 2035 for highway to highway. It's time to take action, and we really appreciate the fact that you're doing that and taking a look at our project. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions?
Same question, she supports this.
So you're supporting the resolution before us, ma'am? Okay, thank you. Any further comments? Yes, sir?
Sure. My name is S.J. Klein. I'm former president of the community council, now just a member of the council executive board, and I'm also a property owner both in Fairview as a resident and have purchased commercial property on Gamble Street. I've been involved in this project, the Gamble Street redevelopment, since we first went to the legislature to obtain this funding for the study. And really every step of the way we've been working with the representatives from DOT, and as we've understood it, have gotten quite a bit of support in getting this in. And the real excitement was to be able to do it at the same time as the resurfacing project, because it'd be a shame to tear up a road that a year or two after we've just paved it, which looks like what's going to happen now. But as I understand it, staff recommendation is to include this into the TIP. The technical committee was split, and so it hasn't pushed a recommendation or recommended not to. We do hope that you include it at the very least into the TIP and into the MTP. There are several issues besides what's good for us as neighbors. The main things being throughput, public safety, and really that sort of security of knowing what's going to happen so that there can be investment in the area. And those are all things where the status quo really won't do. So we do need action on this as soon as possible. I guess the issue of the state DOT wanting to maintain that 4-lane capacity for overflow from Cabada. When we're really kind of faced with the public safety issue, and these sidewalks are really horrible, and we are a huge pedestrian area, both children and inebriates, neither of which really know how to handle cars at 40, 50 miles an hour in 4 lanes. So, yeah, we do hope that you'll move to include this.
Thank you. Any further comments? Yes, sir.
My name is Christopher Constant, and I'm currently president of the Fairview Community Council. And I'm here to communicate that the Community Council is strongly in support, unanimously in support of moving this project forward in whatever increment this body decides. As long as we're seeing it move forward, let's move it forward. I want to mention that we're currently in the process of formalizing our neighborhood plan, our community plan, and it's made it through the Planning and Zoning Commission now on a unanimous vote, which was quite amazing to us. And that process is now moving up to the Assembly for their consideration and looking closely at how the neighborhood is going to move forward in the next 20 years or so. And as you have heard, if things were just left to as they stand, it would be 2035 before this project would be picked up to be looked at and included in planning. In 2035, if you have children or grandchildren at age 6, will be when they're graduating with their master's degree and coming into the world to do this and lead. And so we really can't afford to wait that long. Our neighborhood is in need. And so I'm here to appeal to you to move this forward, and also to keep in mind that we're not going away, that we're going to keep pushing until this starts to move. So this action is helpful if you take this action. I want to point out the findings of the Planning and Zoning Commission that were signed and approved. I just quickly read 3 findings about this very project. This project is included in the neighborhood plan as approved. They did have a caveat in one of their amendments that they want to make sure that it comes through this process. So that was important, but also finding number 11 under the resolution 2014-032 of the Planning and Zoning Commission reads that the Fairview Neighborhood Plan recommends the Gamble Street Corridor project as an essential redevelopment and multimodal transportation element to help bring change and certainty to the neighborhood, to aid the community in overcoming the detrimental effects of the highway to highway or the Glen to Seward highway connection. Finding number 12, the Gamble Street Corridor project could ultimately bring Main Street back to Fairview. Municipal representation is essential on AMATS to advocate for this neighborhood as the project fits within the context of regional transportation solutions. And then finding number 13, and this is the most damning, is that Gamble Street is neither safe for the public nor safe for traffic. It is time to stop studying Gamble Street and to take action for improvements. Concerning AMATS plan noted on page 32, to delay a project until 2035 could be considered a taking through the 20-year delays asked of property owners. Public agencies should make their decisions in a timely manner. It's just the point of the council that it's time. If Gamble Street is such an important road to the state highway system, as we've been told, it should be treated like an important road. It should look like an important road and not just look like something that's been left to die for the last and next 20 years, last 40 years. So it's the opinion of the council that this project should move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Thank you. Anybody else? James?
Mr. Chairman, I'm Abe Thompson with the Alaska Trucking Association, and we've been a party to some of the discussions with Paul and his redevelopment group. And I'd just like to make a few comments. Number one, Gamble Street is one of 2 truck routes southbound from the Port of Anchorage and from areas north of Anchorage. The other route is L Street, Minnesota Drive, and the Seward Highway. Gamble Street's the preferred route for oversized and particularly overheight loads. Gamble Street carries the bulk of the southbound truck traffic. The AMATS Freight Advisory Committee is about to begin. Let me back up. Any design of Gamble Street must consider the larger context of freight mobility in and through Anchorage. And the AMATS Freight Advisory Committee is about to begin a freight mobility study, which will look at to study and to assess freight movements within the AMATS area. The study should prove very useful in identifying truck routes and future truck route needs. And our only concern is that Gamble Street redevelopment should not be considered in isolation, because it's a national highway system route, it's a truck route. Regardless of what happens to Gamble Street, there will still be trucks on Gamble Street. So, thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Thompson? No. Thank you. Any further comments? Mr. Steele?
I do have one question, if I may,
Question of,
Mr. Thompson.
fire away, sir.
Yeah, my question is, does the change 4 lanes to 3 lanes concern you as regards to truck traffic on?
Yes, it does.
And
It's a matter of capacity through the chair.
And even in light of the fact that there's going to be some changes on the highway to highway, I know that's a long ways down the road.
Well,
And
through the chair,
which may change truck traffic through there.
through the chair, Mr. Steele, I guess part of our concern is that there's some uncertainty involved here in understanding what is going to happen. And my comments are directed at, as a reminder, that it is a truck route. It's a national highway system route. And the feds pay particular attention to freight movements on national highway system routes. So please think of us as we move forward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any discussion in front of us and/or a motion?
So, move to approve.
Move to approve the recommendation.
Yes.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion now? We've got a motion in front of us.
Can we ask a couple of questions of the Kittleson folks?
I guess you may.
Gary or Bob, who are the right guys? Just the conceptual design of moving 4 to 3 lanes, can you remind me, is the lane width greater than the existing lane width with 4 lanes?
Mr. Chairman, yes, the current lane widths are 11 and 10 and a halves. We're going to go to 12-foot lanes. And we have a constriction because the right-of-way on Gamble Street is only 60 feet. So in order to accommodate the pedestrians and the other issues required for that, we end up with a 3-lane section, but there are wider lanes than what they have there today.
And if I may just follow up on that real quickly, remind me, I know you presented to us, and I apologize that too many facts trying to muddle my head. What was the level of service variation that you found with the preferred alternative that had, I think it was a turn lane pocket at 15th vis-a-vis going, when you move from 3 to 4?
To be sure, Mr. Flynn, yes, we have a concern at 15th Avenue as you're going south on Gamble. There's a large amount of left-hand turns there, so by going to the 3 lanes, we felt we needed to have an auxiliary lane added to that particular corner to make that southbound to eastbound left turn work. But the rest of the level of services didn't change from the existing in that. And probably what's driving that too is, really, Gamble was 4 lanes, but once you get down to Firewood Lane, you go down to a 3-lane section. It's fed by 2 lanes from 5th Avenue and 2 lanes from 6th Avenue. So they have a 4-lane section in this area. As we found, the speeds are in the 30 to 35-mile range on average in that. We did not have any progression times problems with that going to the 3 lanes. So I think the constraints are other places in here other than 15th Avenue. Yes.
Thank you. Further questions? No more questions, Mr. Chairman. Well, when you're ready, I'd like to amend the motion. But I'll wait. Okay.
Can I just ask you a question?
Sure.
So, we've got a concept, that's been presented to everybody. And my understanding is that right now we certainly have indications that the concept as indicated certainly has merit, could possibly work. As we further develop the project, what happens when you go through and start doing the engineering exercise and everything else on this project? Does that mean that there could be another alternative to the 3 lanes, or how does that all work?
Well, let me speak to where I think we're at on this thing. I think we've got a resolution before us to, what I believe is, review this project in the broader context of the traffic study that's being done under the MTP, to evaluate the impacts of this across the entire community, not just within the locality of the 3 lanes and 4 lanes. And so I think that's I think that question is premature at this point to me. I think we have to do the planning level, make sure it works at a planning level, and then come down into it and say, okay, now that we've got the planning level figured out, we can talk about the project level. But I guess I don't believe the time is right currently to talk about project details.
Okay, that's why I asked the question, because I think there's an awful lot more that has
So
to be fleshed
I
out.
think we're trying to take it one step at a time.
Yeah.
I think the logical step right now is to look at the big picture traffic and make sure as we talk with Mr. Lyons that we get consistent data inputs, we understand, we have a chance to review the modeling at the technical committee level, verify that everything is consistent, and then move forward based on those types of results. Okay. Mr. Flynn, you would like to propose a modification to the recommendation. Please.
I'd rather, after the existing recommendation, I'd like to have a common clause and included in the 2015 to 2018 tip.
And include.
Included. I don't know, if you, when you're ready, Mr. Chairman, I'll speak to that real briefly.
Please do.
Well, there's just a couple of reasons I think this is an appropriate addition to the recommendation. First off, as we discussed, we do have a resurfacing project coming along, and if there's a way to leverage those dollars to move this project forward, even if that means delaying that for a year or two, I think that would be cost effective, for the taxpayer and an appropriate use of scarce resources. Second piece of that is I do want to create a certain sense of urgency behind this. If we're going to do it, let's get it done, rather than letting it sit and be considered and be thought about and be studied. We've got a lot of data already in, we've paid for it, let's use it. And so that's the reason for the amendment.
I guess I'm going to say one thing. Does anybody care to second that amendment, or should we just consider the lack of second on that a death knell?
Second.
Smart move. Okay, further discussion, Ms. Howell.
Okay, this is a technical issue about that amendment and why I asked the question that I did. Currently, the 2015 to 2018 TIP does not have the project as you noted. We released the air quality conformity analysis based on the listed things. If you add a project to a TIP, it triggers an air quality conformity analysis. We will need to redo it and go back out to public comment, probably, most likely. So I'm just saying from a technical perspective and timing wise, that's most likely a reality of what's going to happen.
So now that you brought it up, I guess it's incumbent on you to give us an estimate of how long and how much that would be suffering in terms of time and pain.
We're in a limited maintenance plan, so it's much easier than it used to be. It would still require an interagency consultation. We would have to put it in the documents. It has to go back out to public comment. It could try to wiggle around and extend the public comment period, but you still have to update the documents to put it in. And adding it now, you're not having to approve the document, because you can't approve the TIP until the air quality conformity has been through the whole thing, and you approve the air quality conformity prior to approving the TIP. So you won't be able to approve the TIP until the air quality conformity is completed.
I'm not sure that was.
You do it.
I'm not sure that really answered my question.
I think she said 60 days.
There's options. I just
Yeah,
don't know.
I would suggest, if you want to include it in the TIP, doing it now, you run the risk of not having a TIP approved in time to start the next fiscal year, which is October 1. And I don't think that's the best idea. We could easily consider this language to mean included in the TIP. After the TIP is approved, amendment number 1, which starts right away, could be adding this project in, and then we don't slow down the process of getting this TIP approved, but we would follow the intent of this motion, I think, which is to add this into the latest TIP. I don't know in what manner you want to add this exactly, but that would not delay our current TIP, which we've got a little bit of time, but we're getting to the point when after we adopt it, we still need to send it to to DOT headquarters, and then they need to send it to the federal highways, and it takes a little bit of time if you're closing in on that October
This is a
1
major
point.
amendment. When you add a new project, that
Yes,
our
this
policy,
would be a
public
major
involvement
amendment.
process says that new project and tip, or tip amendment is a major amendment and has to go through everybody in the world again.
Yeah.
So, and bear with us, you guys, these are federal funds. If we didn't use federal funds for this project or potentially for this project, we wouldn't have to go through all this. So, it's the unfortunate strings attached to the money source that you're using.
Our technical expert is raising his hand, Mr. Chairman. Maybe we should ask his opinion.
James Boyle, DOT, through the chair to the board. Just also want to point out, and Craig, if I'm wrong, I know, but I believe since we've already went through the public comment period for the draft tip, that if we add a project, we'll have to go back and redo public comment period, which is another 30 days.
That's what I'm talking about, major
Yeah,
amendment.
so Cindy's right about just doing an amendment if it comes to that once the tip is approved.
Purposes.
We could include the 2015 to 2018 tip as amendment number 1.
Yeah, so that way we was.
Yeah, that would be reasonable to me.
Well, let me bring up one other question here, as long as we're talking about this thing. So, let me understand this, Mr. Flynn. I mean, we've got for us a motion which basically would include this project as a component in our transportation study for the bowl. You're saying regardless of the results of that study, you want this thing in the tip? Is that what you're saying?
That was a pretty aggressive interpretation of my comment.
The answer is yes. I'm trying to clarify my own where you're going.
I'm saying I'd like to get this moved forward more quickly than it would if we simply include it in discussion around the MTP and therefore put it into our tip. Recognizing the comments from Ms. Heil, Mr. Lyon, and Mr. Bull, perhaps it would be more appropriate to add a little bit more language to this, and considered as amendment number 1 to the 2015 to 18 tip, so that we can not delay the effort to complete the tip in a timely manner, but that we get it on the radar and moving forward quickly. Trying to get smart out so you can get it done in a timely manner, sir.
So would you like to modify the language of your proposed amendment?
I'd be happy to do that.
Okay.
I'll do, how about, and considered as amendment number 1 to the 2015-2018 tip. Would that work for you, Mr. Lyon?
That works.
Okay. Do we have a second on that, please?
I'll second.
Second, okay. So at this point, does anybody from the public care to comment on the proposed amendment before us?
There's reference to amendment. Any action you take at this meeting is voidable because you conduct a meeting without inappropriate notice in the open meetings law and state law. And you take action to say you should have just canceled this meeting and rescheduled with appropriate notice. And I've noticed that the members of the assembly here are completely silent. I've been investigating this situation on public meetings and process since April 4, 2012. I told this placard of my work by the press, but the assembly members here have been completely silent on my work and my questioning, and I'm addressing you. At least in Matthews Borough, my address concerns, they address those in public, but you're not addressing it. And I caution you because the appropriate thing right now is, look, we need to cancel this meeting and reschedule. This was not a appropriate notice for the public, and this will be part of my ongoing investigation and reports that go out. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'd be happy to share later with this gentleman, but I can show you the several different locations where this was noticed. Ms. Blake can show you one click off the very forcemuni.org page.
I made copies. I have copies of those notices. It's not there.
Right off of the main muni.org page, there's a place where you can click to select your meetings. It was notified on the
Mr.
AMATS
Lyon will talk
webpage.
to you after the meeting and address your comments, please.
Well, I have the evidence. You can't change the evidence. It's been copied. It's taken off the site just to...
Appreciate your comments, sir. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Paul Foos with the Fairview Business Association. We think this alternative language is great. keeps it forward, keeps it moving. I just want to reiterate our commitment to work with you on all these other projects. Like Heidi said, that all tie into this. We know this. We're not ignoring that.
Thank you. Any further comments? Any further comments from this body on the language in front of us? I believe that Mr. Pinelli.
Move to approve as amended.
We
Second.
have to vote on the amendment.
I was gonna-
first.
Well, I thought you changed it.
I did change the amendment.
So we now have before us the motion to modify the recommendation to include the language and consider it as amendment number 1 in the 2015-2018 TIP. So is there any objection from the board to that modification to the recommendation? Seeing none, that is passed. We now have the entire recommendation in front of us. Is there any further discussion on the entire recommendation? Any objection to that passing? Seeing none, that passes unanimously. Okay, thank you. I believe that concludes most of our business items, if not all of them, Mr. Lyon.
All that I have for business items.
Okay, so informational reports, TIP admin mod number 11.
So administrative modifications by federal rules require the technical advisory committee approval. That's what it says in our policy and procedures as well. And we went through there. You can see there are 2 changes. One in the CMAQ table where we realized that the funding that was available in the Air Quality Public and Business Awareness Education Campaign was enough to do it, and they didn't need the 2014 allocation of $300,000 in total, and we were able to move that money down into the transit fleet expansion, the excess. So that was done in agreement with both the health department and the public transit advisory, or public transit group department. And then table 7, we're updating the railroads funding from their 5307 funds. So that's outside of our allocation, but since it's the federal funding in the AMATS area, we need to include that. So those 2 changes were made, and they were approved by the Technical Advisory Committee, so they're here for you for information purposes only. It's already been approved, we're just going to need to send that through to the state to get it included in the STIP.
All right, thank you.
Happy to answer other questions, but just for informational purposes.
All right. Mr. Flynn, any questions?
No, I know this one pretty well.
Okay. Good to move on. 2015-18 TIP air quality conformity determination. I think we've already had several references to that today, so I'm assuming.
References, just updating you folks to know that the air quality conformity determination process includes a 30-day public review, and so the Technical Advisory Committee released this for a 30-day public comment period at their July 10th regular meeting. That is available on the AMATS website for the folks to look at it. I have a few copies of the determination here. It's out for 30-day public review, which closes on August 11th. Barring any adverse comments, we will then bring the actual TIP back before the committees for approval at the next month's committees.
Okay. Any questions on that topic from Mr. Lyon? Under other informational items, I'd like to add MTP update.
We're there. So the MTP update, as you folks may remember, it was approved May 25th, 2013?
Mm-hmm.
My glasses on. So, and that would require in 4 years' time, it would need to be approved. That would be May 25th of 2016. There are a couple of different things that have slowed us down, but at this point, we are looking at probably with as fast as we could get everything done and all the planets lining up, a November timeframe.
November of what year?
November of 2016, so a few months behind there, so 5-6 months late. There are regulations that allow, if you go into a conformity lapse, the previous routine was you'd go into conformity lapse and you would not be able to obligate any new phases of projects. So if you were in the right-of-way phase, you could not start construction. If you had started the right-of-way phase, you could continue with that. If you had started the design phase, you could continue with that, but if you were done with it, you couldn't start the next phase. This language is now in place that allows a grace period, a 1-year grace period, and allows you to continue operating as if you weren't in a conformity lapse, though you are.
You can't do amendments.
You can't do amendments to your program, but you can continue funding the current.
Do we have a team or a project leader on this other than yourself? Do we have a consultant team that's leading this effort?
We do not have our RFP on the streets. We expect to be on the streets with it sometime in the next month. We hope to have a consultant on board by the end of this year.
Okay.
And the last time we did it after the consultant came on board was about a 17-month timeframe. So, we have that grace period that we have there, but the AMATS staff suggested an alternate route, which the Technical Advisory Committee, I think, is pretty much on board with, is to do what's called an interim MTP, which you don't update any of your assumptions, you don't change any of your projects, but you just affirm what you have in there. You don't extend your horizon year, so you're looking 20 years out, but you don't restart that. But what you do is you get the new four-year clock. We would not slow down our efforts at all on the MTP process that we're working on, the major one. But this would make it so we wouldn't go into the conformity labs.
So that would be a parallel activity then? I'll tell you what, can you put this on the calendar, much like we got a request from Mr. Flynn for next month? Can you honor a small trivial request from me to bring us an update on where we're at with the MTP? And perhaps, for me, just a schedule is really important. As much as you're telling me, I'm not really sure I'm
I
assimilating.
did have the schedule with you, but it would take a while to go through. I'm happy to do that.
Can you kind of give us a executive level briefing next month?
Sure.
With a schedule and kind of where we're at in terms
Absolutely.
of getting to where we
Yeah.
need to get to,
And we'll-
including this shadow plan that you've
Yeah.
hinted at here?
Part of what we're doing here, so the last time we did the MTP, we just did the MTP update. This time, we're updating our model, which we haven't done in a while. You have to do that after you get a new census. So with the census, we do a new household travel survey, which we haven't done in over a decade because you can do it with the census. And so we're doing that at the same time. So that's another moving part. And then there's the demand model.
I just think
so all
having
these moving parts
a
together.
couple weeks for you to think about it, perhaps to hire a consultant in a couple of weeks so that you aren't in front of the spotlight next month. Oh, you love doing this.
Just so you know, we had a spirited discussion at the last TAC because the policy procedure request to extend for a year was very discouraging. And we knew that there's all these things were slipping. So we had a work session just before this meeting this week. Was it this week, last week? I can't remember.
It was last week.
So we came with a whole lot of things, and they've got quite a list of stuff that they're already working on that the TAC laid out. So I
Okay.
think that what you've requested would be, you'll have a lot more information.
I don't want to have a lot of information.
No,
I
you'll
just
have a
want to
very
have
succinct-
a succinct description of where we're going
Yes.
at a policy level. And I don't want to get down into the mechanics or the weeds.
We have
And I
we're coming up-
refuse to let anybody drag us there. So.
Was he looking at you? No, actually, he was pointing at you. I would just like to, if I may add to your comment, Mr. Chair.
Sure.
First, I appreciate that we have the option of just doing call it the shadow version, the extension.
Yeah.
Because I do think it's important that I agree with the staff and.
But I'd like to kind of see it in a
Right.
package so we can comprehend the whole totality of what we're doing.
Because what I'm really concerned about is with the last MTP, as you know, we got compressed, and I'm not sure we did as good a job as we could have. And so I think
We're headed that way on this one.
I hope not.
That's why I'm trying to get it.
And to that point, that's why if we do the interim one, we can make sure that we're not compressed. We have a full 4 years after that, and we'll continue going along the lines.
Fine.
And
And again, I'm sure that if the advisory committee thinks that's the right course of action, I would suspect that we will support it at this level too. I'm not implying that we won't, but I would just like to see kind of what the thinking is, because this really is pretty policy level stuff here. Okay, thank you, Mr. Line. I didn't mean to put you on the spot, but you've got a month to get ready. So from the committee, Mr. Steele, do you have any comments?
Mr. Chair, can I make one other announcement?
Yes, please.
That kind of coincides with that. As I said, we have several different contracts out there. We have consultants working on that. But in addition, we also have more staff people. Through the UPWP, you allocated funds to replace the person that we had, but in addition, hire a new person. And one of the people that we've already hired is here. Joni Wilms, our new associate planner. She used to be in the long-range planning group, so we have her helping out as well. And then in addition, we just hired a new associate planner who should start on the 4th. So we'll be as fully staffed as we could possibly be at this point, and should be able to help the consultants with their work and get stuff moving along very well.
Great. It's good news.
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Steele, any
I'd
comments?
like to hold my comments and see what happens on the rest of the comments as we go down. If I may,
Wow.
Mr. Chairman.
Okay, by all means, Mr. Flynn.
Well, there was obviously a terrible error in the traffic demand study because I was asked to participate, and but I did.
Excellent.
That's all.
Thank you. Mr. Michaelis.
I like to hold my comments at the end of a period of time. No comments.
Harassment.
Well,
No, I'm fine.
Mr. Steele,
Back to me. No, good meeting. I'm glad I was able to participate in the technical committee, or not participate, but at least observe. You got a lot of people involved there, all the right people. And,
Pretty
doing
smart
good work.
group. Really is. I have no further comments myself. I think I've made plenty today, so I thank you for your patience. Our next meeting will be on the 28th of August, right back here at 1:30, and I'm sure it will be appropriately noticed. With that, we are adjourned.
All right, what are you doing?